Hello, innovators. I'm Todd Weyandt, and welcome to the Bridging the Gap podcast presented by Great Tech Group. You're invited to join our conversation to model the future of construction innovation and the digital transformation of this great industry. My guest today is Thomas Mellendorf. He's a process engineer with a strong analytical foundation, holding degrees in both mathematics and mechanical engineering. He brings a systems-driven approach to problem solving, combining technical rigor with practical engineering insight, and has been in the prefab industry for 3 years. And outside of his professional work, he's also a licensed private pilot working towards his additional ratings and certificates. Well, welcome to the show, Thomas.
Hey, thanks, Todd, for having me.
Thanks for taking the time to come on. So I always like to get people's kind of background story and appeal of the construction industry. So what got you into the construction industry to begin with?
Yeah, so I'll try and keep it brief, but after I graduated high school, I entered at Young Harris College. I admitted to there, and I was on this thing called the 3-2 program. So I could go to Young Harris for 3 years and get a math degree, and then everything would transfer seamlessly over to the University of Georgia, and then I could go there for 2 years and get a mechanical engineering degree. And thankfully, everything worked out. There wasn't really any hiccups or anything like that. But in between going to school at Young Harris, I started taking summer jobs, and I worked at a zipline place. But once I was going to go to Georgia for mechanical engineering, I'm like, okay, well, I need to get a little bit more engineering experience. Like I worked at a machine shop before the zipline stuff, but I'm like, I need to get kind of solidified my knowledge base a little bit. So I went to apply for a job at Panel Built, and they took me on as an intern so I could be a drafter for them. And I really enjoyed working for them, and I kind of worked on and off with them while I was going to school at UGA. And then afterwards, they offered me a full-time position. I gladly accepted.
Yeah, that's awesome. And very, very practical getting the intern. Though the zipline job sounds like so much fun. I would
Oh yeah, yeah.
enjoy doing that a lot too. But that's awesome. Any aspect on the construction industry that kind of gripped you of like, oh yeah, this feels right?
I don't know necessarily about construction itself. Like just like from an engineering standpoint, like I know I really didn't want to be doing the exact same thing every day. And I think where
Mhm.
being a process engineer kind of fit with me is I get to look at all aspects of what we do at Panel Belt. Like, yes, on the construction side, but also more of like from a digital standpoint too, working with the software and just optimizing it for everybody in
Mhm.
their use. Like I would like to go a little bit more on the physical side, start looking at how we manufacture certain things in house for prefab, because we do order a lot of materials outside of our company, but we are looking more and more on research and how we can develop things in house for us.
Yeah, nice. Well, let's dive into prefab. It's one of our favorite topics around here. So, why do you believe that the prefab is such a critical uh, lever for the future of the construction industry?
Well, I like to see it through the eyes of the customer. I mean, for us, everything is very customized to everything that the customer wants in terms of
Hmm.
building specs, building code, everything. We customize everything just down to every opening, fastener, pretty much. And what's great about prefab is we're able to take, you know, all the data that goes into that and try and streamline it into making their building a good product that they're gonna love and come back to us for, hopefully some more. But yeah.
Yeah. So, when we're thinking about optimizing the prefab operations side of things,
Mm.
where do you think it should start first? Is it the process technology or people angle?
I would say first off, it depends. I would kind of pick apart where's the weakest link here. Like
Mhm.
for us, I'm not saying this was our weakest link, but I think where I was able to find the most to improve, like I said, like I don't have a huge construction background, but at least on the software side, we started using AutoCAD drawings, and that everything in there is just lines. So
Mhm.
finally going to a 3D software, or I mean, AutoCAD does have 3D, but with Revit, we switched over to Revit where we can actually use BIM and get information in our models and able to transfer that info into the software and then out of the software too, and just kind of streamline everything and just not have to duplicate everything. So more so from a time perspective, I think it was for us. Um, but at least company wise, our building systems, like they change every so often, but they've stayed pretty consistent.
Talk to me about that process of having to go from the 2D to 3D because it's a big mindset shift and overhaul, and there's a lot of change management dynamics that uh, definitely go into to play with that. So, how is that process like for you all?
Yeah. So I'll give you a real quick background. So we really didn't know as a company where we wanted to take this because we had everybody from the start just use AutoCAD, but then we had some people that we hired that had really a lot of experience in Revit, and we started letting them use Revit, kind of build up a
Uh-huh.
library and transfer some of our standards over it and see how that would look. But then we also had a couple people that they were actually well versed in Autodesk Inventor, and see how that kind of worked. Because and I know from a lot of people's perspectives, why would you want to use Inventor, which is way more for like manufacturing, like machine parts and stuff, than it is, I would say, buildings. And for us, we were trying to get like a digital twin of the building, but for something like Inventor, that was a huge task to surmise. We actually started building like an entire asset database that we were going to use, and then ended up scrapping it all just to go to Revit because we found out, just through experimentation, like what's going to work best. And I actually was a huge Inventor advocate because I never used Revit before, like more so with mechanical engineering. I was kind of, it's more in school, we're kind of hitting all the different engineering topics. Like we didn't have
Mhm.
one focus. So I mostly used Inventor for more so manufacturing than I was construction. So once I saw how powerful Revit was, getting to use that quite a bit and learn, I think it became pretty clear that I'm like, yeah, just because I want this to happen, what's actually going to work out best?
Yeah. No, I think it's an interesting approach to it for sure. And with Inventor, like there's lots of people that have been using Inventor more recently with when it comes to construction, as construction and the manufacturing lines are starting to blur and kind of come together in prefab and industrialized construction. The That's a very common trend line is how do we make construction more like a manufacturing facility, and that it's a different mindset again, uh, to do the manufacturing side versus the construction side. How do you think through that of like how would you define a good system in what prefab would look like?
Well, first off, I think communication just between all the teams is probably the most important thing I've learned so far. Like, I came in from an engineering standpoint thinking like, oh, it's only our CAD that's the only problem holding us back here. If we get this fixed, everything's going to be solved. And then you figure out later that's like, well, no, that's just one cog in the machine making this all work. And you can optimize this really well. But then you start noticing that like, well, how can we make this work for all the other teams? How can we
Mhm.
make, how can we improve our communication with sales and materials and shipping and all these teams together, just get information in and out without any problems. Like we have a dedicated quality team to making sure that any problems that come up in manufacturing we address and implement through some kind of process. How can we make that better and make it never happen again, pretty much.
Mhm.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
think communication is just probably the most important thing, and just yeah, keeping everybody on the same page.
Yeah, I love that you said that because I think it can be such an overlooked thing because it is so. I want to say obvious, but that's not actually the case because people miss it so much. So it's not that obvious, but it seems like such a simple thing to say. Of oh, we just need to communicate better, but it is one of the most crucial and one of the most difficult parts of the entire process is to get everybody in and communicating in the same manner, in the same system, looking at the same piece of information, and then interpreting the information in a similar way. How have you been able to try to bridge that gap and get people communicating better?
Yeah, well, first of all, and I like it. You kind of said that it is simple because it is pretty. Like I say it in kind of a vague way because there's multiple ways you can attack that. But I mean, one of the ways I think I've tried to help the team out is so like in Revit I don't want to say I picked it up super quickly or anything. There's a lot of things I keep learning every day, but I kind of took it upon myself to develop an add-in for the team. And that way we can bring in information outside of Revit from our other softwares we get from other companies.
Hmm.
But right now I'm trying to really work with our IT team who's developing kind of this one company ecosystem to where I can get the information that everybody, so we have sales and project management, material and engineering. We're all using this one software now. And I'm just trying to figure out how we can get all the information in and out of there from an engineering standpoint without any, having that single source of truth, not just having duplicates or, so it's not necessarily like communication is in like an email perspective, but
Sure.
definitely keeping everybody in the loop. Like we've almost have, I won't go with too much into the nitty gritty, but I mean, for all of our jobs we do, like we have kind of like a post-it board of everything that we have notes wise that come up because so many things happen for some of our more complicated jobs that's kind of, all the information that's pertinent to each department. You'll see what you need to know. And I think it's a real good implementation by all of our team members.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that you said that it's not just sending the email. And I think that that's people's kind of default is like, oh, I sent an email or I sent a chat or whatever, whatever channel that you want. And that's not really good communication. It's much bigger than that. It's being able to find the information, find the data when you need it, and in the format and in the place where it makes the most amount of sense and to the right people. That's where you have a really good communication channel and method. I want to pick up on something else that you said in that last answer about the one ecosystem. What does an ideal connected ecosystem look like through design to fabrication for you?
For me, I do my best. Like I'm not like a big software developer or anything. I have learned a lot and I took some coding classes, but I won't lie and say I haven't used AI on helping me develop certain things. But
It's
it does. You do
the
have to
name of the
know,
game now. Yeah.
yeah, you do have to know kind of what you're working with before you just kind of let it go on autopilot. Like I like coding my stuff myself and either have it edit stuff for me or come up with snippets. But yeah, I'm sorry. Can you repeat that second half of that question again?
Yeah, no worries. The one connected ecosystem, what
Oh
does
yeah, what
that
is
look
that?
like
Yeah,
through design to fabrication?
perfect. Sorry about that. So yeah, a connected ecosystem. I kind of am just looking for something that works. It doesn't have to be the prettiest thing out there. Like I'm not looking for that Apple level software, but I do want something that works and is not confusing for people to use. And I think that's kind of the same philosophy that our other team members that are working on other stuff for the company are trying to do. Like the communication's a little bit separate between those, but I'm doing my best to work together and come up with something that can be pretty cohesive. I'm
Hmm.
we have little bits of things we're creating on the side that hopefully we can implement into other software so we don't have 50 million apps. It's more so just a function of one thing versus you have this website for this, you have this website for this. Eventually the end goal is just having it where everything's integrated. You all have like an account system set up where, things just a lot of things do become automatic. Like I don't want everything to be automated, but it a lot of times it is very useful.
Yeah. So to dig in a little bit on that, how do you determine what's actually worth being automated versus, okay, this could probably stay manual? How do you think through that?
Yeah, that's actually a great question because when it comes to like emails and stuff, and more so for communication, we're coming up with ways that can really just automate the entire process. Like when it comes to just job numbers and information, we know in the company who needs to see this, who this needs to go to, timelines, dates. We can have all that stuff set up, and I really like that. But when it comes to I think on the more construction building design side, part of this comes into play that our company has standards when it comes to some of our products. Like we do welded buildings, analyzed buildings, and ballistic buildings, and we do other products. But just kind of each one of those products has a different building system and standards. And my task was kind of to see if I could take those standards and either in a mathematical way or just user selection way, figure out how we can automate placing building components inside the software versus doing it the typical way you would in Revit. Now, like some of our products are one offs. So that's something probably not worth automating. But if like, hey, we sell a lot of welded buildings a year and we know we make bases for all these or we have our wall system set up, like that's something that totally we'd want to automate or at least semi-automate. That's kind of my philosophy is get something that works and then improve upon it versus take forever on all this time that no one's really getting to use anything and you don't see any return on investment. It's getting something that works and then improving upon it. Uh,
Yeah,
I think is
I
kind of
love
the
that.
key way.
One of my good friends always says, "Make it work, and then make it work better."
Yeah.
And it's just such a good philosophy to live by, no matter what. You just
Yeah.
get a working prototype, and then start innovating and finding those 1% improvements after that, and then that's how you're able to kind of scale up on the efficiency front.
Yeah.
Where do you think are some of the biggest breakdowns today that between the systems that should be connected but aren't connected?
Yeah. Well, part of it for us is, like I said, you know how we were changing from 2D AutoCAD, we're going to 3D Revit, and we're also implementing other softwares too. We're doing that on the front of the whole company with the one software we're using to kind of keep everything together with all the departments. Things are going to break when you do that, and just
Uh-huh.
figuring out, okay, well, what kind of kept this thing together, and part of that for me was just trying to keep it simple. Like my first sort of steps for things was, okay, how can I just export something to an Excel sheet? And I don't care really about the format. I'll figure out the format and then I'll figure out how I'm going to bring this in. You know, it
Uh-huh.
it's it's kind of like that black box problem where, you put something in, you don't really care about what happens inside, and it gets put out, like, or that your
Yeah.
output comes out. That's really what I think everybody's really concerned about. And when it comes to your task, trying to find your way to, if you're in charge of that black box, just making sure you're running a type ship there, then things are going to go pretty smoothly.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you had to start from scratch, you had a blank sheet of paper and you could do whatever you wanted, what system or integration would you prioritize first?
That's a good question. Well, I kind of want to bring the conversation into AI a little bit
Yeah.
because
We made it
I'm
pretty far before really diving into AI. So that's pretty good.
yeah.
So dive away.
Yeah. I mean, trust me, I'm by no means let's AI everything. Let's put I'm not like that, but they're really today. Everybody is starting to really find a good use for AI where it can kind of fit into some of these systems, especially with automation. But
Mhm.
I've still found that a lot of cases today, I don't necessarily need AI. Like it might take AI for me to code something, but I don't necessarily need an AI model in the background using reasoning to do stuff. But actually have been a few cases, and even now that I'm starting to do a little bit more research and develop for certain AI models that can take information from our sales department and then compile that in, or it outputs a code that, like, in a format that I made, and then that can go into my add-in that I made, and then run all the tools I've made that everyone else can use, but they can also put the building together just from reading the sales proposal. And I think
Uh,
just trying to find ways that you can take an AI model and figure out how to leverage its reasoning. Because most people, I feel like, use AI in the chat box sense. Like they'll go on Chat GPT, and and I still think that's a great thing. Like you can get information very quickly from that. You just always got to make sure it's accurate and correct. But it is really good to quickly get you information that you don't want to scour hours on the internet for. But I think the real exciting potential of AI is just using APIs and other resources that you're able to take the models and actually make them do something. So you're getting you're giving them an input, giving them output like you would in the chat box, but then based on their output, you're actually getting something to happen in some sort of software, whether it's Revit or not. That's typically what I've been doing, but people
mhm.
can use that to leverage anything. Like we could do that for our one overall company software. I mean, people do it in Excel and all sorts of cool stuff.
Yeah. I love how you broke that down on the AI front because I think the fear of AI coming in and replacing every single engineer because AI is going to build the whole entire model by itself. That fear seems overblown to me right now. I just don't see that workflow really happening
Yeah,
holistically. But being able to take the data that you have from disparate platforms and solutions and disseminate, like, here's the important information that we need so that engineer can then perform his job better and design the model better. I think that's a awesome use of AI and be able to speed up the process, which is critical. So I think that's pretty spot on with the AI workflow.
thanks. Can I give you a real quick example, kind of what that
Yeah.
would look like? for our sales proposal, like they sell a building, we get all the customer specs ready to go. Oh, all that information has to be put on the drawings because when the customer gets it, they have to see, okay,
Right.
well, besides what this the building's dimensions are, what is this? What are the specs that I paid for that are based on this legal document that we want the legal stuff still inside the
Right.
drawings? Well, a big limitation of Revit, I'll try not to get into nitty gritty, but like if you really want to format something to look nice, it can't all be in one text box. We could do an AutoCAD, but that's one of those things where it's like, okay, we're upgrading systems, but things start breaking. And one AI tool I made was I had it read our an AI model read our sales proposal, break down the headings and body text of every single thing in that document, and then
Mhm.
I had it put it into a certain format of text, and then my program just came in and read that format and then put it in nice and neatly formatted on the page. Because otherwise, you're going to have to sit on the Word document, copy, paste. We talk about people scared like AI is going to take over every job, and I still think that's a valid conversation to have, in the next couple of years or so. But I don't think anybody wants to hit copy paste on the documents. Like I think that's something that's great that AI can do.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's finding those moments where AI truly is the um, efficiency gainer,
Hmm.
and not the uh, it's not going to totally take over 100% of everybody's job, because the part that people do the best is what AI does the worst, and that's being able to take the information and use our creativity and come out with a new output, and be more strategic. AI can process all the data way better than humans can. AI can do a manual task way better than a human can, because they don't get like entirely bored and checked out of just going into the motions. It can do all that great. So let it do that, and let the people actually focus on the creative and strategic task.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm glad you actually said that because when it comes to like us on the engineering side with the drawings in our drafting department, I would really like us to spend more time focusing on what the customer really wanted to be,
Mhm.
all these custom aspects of the building. If we're having to focus on the stuff that we do for every single job, then that's less time that goes into really fine tuning this building. And overall, the goal is to get the time down as much as possible, but you still have that extra time in order to come in and, either go to the customer, ask questions and, put in, you know, just put in the extra work you need to get the building looking way better than it would if you had to do it all by hand.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It gives you back the white space time to think, which is awesome. I will take that. Why do you think somebody should be excited about prefab or construction today? And if they're not in the industry, think about coming into the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is really exciting because I think the idea of being able to build like a lot of our products are like we do sell a lot of smaller buildings, but we've sold some pretty large buildings that, really oversized loads that they like it's the entire building gets shipped on a truck. But sometimes we have buildings so big that we're building them in different sections. Like we'll build two halves to a building, ship them out, pull them together. And I think it really but for most of our buildings, it's kind of going on a concrete pad. Like it's not like a traditional stick built structure. But I mean, if you have a building system that's kind of tried and true, works well for you, and you figure out a really good way how you can manufacture that easily, and improve the downtime by just making all the components to spec that you got from the CAD. It's not like you're measuring it on site and doing it. I know CAD's not 100% perfect. When I'm looking at my you know, it's everything's perfect to the atom essentially, but in real life things aren't like that. And I think it's definitely good to add some tolerances in there for you. But prefab is great because a lot of times for at least for our structures, we're able to build something that's reusable. Like you're able to take it somewhere and you can anchor it down. And then if you want, if a company moves or if you have no use for it, it's not like you have to demolish the thing and get rid
Mhm.
of it. I mean, a lot of our products are built to stand for a long time, and you can move them, put them on a truck, or repurpose them for any use.
Yeah.
So I think
Very cool.
the usability for prefab and customization, I think, is huge.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. So I've heard that you've recently been kind of testing and rolling out Strucksoft. I'd love to hear kind of early thoughts, if you will. What stood out about Struxoft, and what are you hoping it really helps to enable over the coming year?
Yeah, so Struxoff is great. I actually saw it back in like October, and it's kind of crazy that it takes so long. We as a company we keep going through buildings, and we're trying to keep our output up without having to slow down and figure out how to use new software and all that good stuff. But we are going to get training very soon for our whole team using Struxoff on the welded department in ballistic. And from what I've noticed, it does everything that I wanted to do for my add-in, but just way better. It's just I didn't do until I started doing a little bit more research. I didn't know something like that existed. I tried to basically hard code our building standards into my add-in, where you're placing the studs by this amount, and you're placing your top plate, bottom plate, your corner posts, all that stuff. I tried to do that by hand, and I achieved that. But then I saw something like Struxoff, and it's like, oh my gosh, you can put the doors in, windows, and it will automatically calculate everything. And it will build shop drawings, auto dimension, BOMs. It will do it all for you. And now it comes out with that capability. You still have to set it up and make it set up your templates and stuff. But I really like the customizability of that software. I mean, it is what I was doing was just hard coded for like one building type, but you could do any building type. I'm really glad to see a software that works for, any company's building systems essentially. And we're more heavier gauge steel, and even like we use a lot of like 3/16, especially for our ballistic buildings. We use like heavy duty steel, but I think it's really cool seeing how this can integrate with other systems, like people that use roll formers in different
Mhm.
companies, that they have a whole streamlined interface that you build it in Revit using Struxoft, and then you can send I don't know the file extension, but you send those files over to the roll former, and it will build all the studs and the floor joists you need, and then it all just comes together. I think that's so cool that something like that exists. And that's the thing, it's like a lot of things still exist that don't this doesn't need AI. I know Struxoft, and formerly known as MWF, has been around for like 10 years already, and so it's already
Right.
been doing this, and it's just continued to improve more and more and more. And I think instead of spending the time trying to figure out how we can do it ourselves, like I'm seeing a software that's already doing what I wanted with no minimal time to get it actually started up. I think within a week I had like all of our building templates set up, but now we're going to get like official training for everybody so they know how to actually use this for our
Yeah,
team.
that's awesome. That's awesome. So as we start to kind of land the plane here on the conversation, a couple of rapid fire questions
Okay.
for you. First, what's the phrase modeling the future? What does that mean and look like to you?
So modeling the future, I feel like just in order to model the future, I think you need to attack whatever's slowing you down the most. Not just attack, because I know some things end up taking longer than others. That's just part of the process for anything. But you got to figure out what's something that I feel like really could be optimized here. It's like getting a chain's only as strong as its weakest link. This is what I've noticed too with CAD. I can spend all this time optimizing all of our workflows, getting a building, the time it takes for a building, from like I don't know 8 hours down to one, or a couple work days to less than a day, all that sort of stuff. But then you realize, well, I get this done, and then I've got to wait for all these other parties to do what they have to do, and it's like that's
Mhm.
only one aspect. So you got to figure out what's the weakest link and how you can fix that first, and just kind of keep shifting where that weakest link is, and then you're going to bring the entire chain up. I think that's what modeling the future is.
Yeah, I like it. What does innovation mean to you?
I think innovation means not being afraid to rethink the problem or question you have, because sometimes your brain is stuck to looking at something a certain way, just from either experience or doing something a certain way so many times that if you don't rethink the question, like I'll give you a quick example. Like on some of our drawings, and or even how our process goes with how we get them to customers, we want to develop certain parts of the building, but then we think about, well, the customer doesn't even really see this. Like we do this, but they won't even see this until way later. So why, like, let's save this for later. Just like, why do we even need to do this? Or why is this even here? To question certain things, asking like, why is this here? Why do we do it this way? And I'm not saying you have to reinvent the wheel, but definitely be open to new ideas or seeing how something simple can just reshape your entire workflow. I think
Have
that's
some
pretty,
curiosity.
yeah.
Yeah. How do people find out more information on Panel Built and connect with you?
So Panel Belt's got several social medias. They have LinkedIn, they have Instagram, and I believe Facebook too. I also have a LinkedIn. It's just Thomas Mellendorf. It's not a super common last name, so it should be pretty easy to find. But if anybody ever wants to reach out and ask me any questions, feel free. I'm always open to talk.
Cool. Well, final question for you, Thomas. If I could give you all construction power, you could snap your fingers and innovate one thing, what would you pick to innovate?
Ooh, I like the question. Well, since a lot of this has been more on the digital side, I will say I really, I don't know if this ever will happen, but it would be so awesome if there's just this universal CAD and CAD database for everything. I'm kind of sick of looking at 50 million different websites to maybe find one product. It would be so awesome. And I know there's nice catalogs that do have stuff, but it would be so awesome if we could have a CAD software that 3D, it just envelops everything, like the best features of every single thing. And I know that's coming from somebody that doesn't understand all, the nuances with some of these softwares. But if I had all construction power, that's what I would do. Get us a universal CAD and, a universal database too, to just find models and information. That's what I noticed on one job I've done recently is, like, dang, why does this small job take me 10 minutes, but this job that's a bit bigger, but take, 2 days, you know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
a part of it is that, I think.
Yeah. Maybe that's a perfect place for AI to come in and play, to be able to go out and find those disparate databases and connect them all together.
Yeah,
I think it's a good one. Yeah.
it's cool.
Awesome. Well, Thomas, thanks so much for taking the time and joining the show today.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Todd.
And now it's time for my Todd takes from this episode. First take, get the full system view. One of the biggest takeaways here is the importance of seeing the entire system, not just your piece of it. It's easy to think the problem is the tool, the model, or the workflow you touch every day. But as Thomas pointed out, that's just one cog in the machine. Real progress happens when you step back and understand how everything connects, from sales to engineering to manufacturing. The teams that win in prefab are the ones that optimize across the system, not just within silos. Take 2. Communication is the multiplier. Communication sounds simple, but it carries outsized weight in execution. It's not just about sending an email or sharing an update. It's about making sure the right people have the right information at the right time in the right place. Communication is what ties every part of the system together. When it breaks down, everything slows down. When it works, it unlocks speed, alignment, and better outcomes across the board. And finally, AI creates space for better thinking. The real value of AI isn't replacing people, it's giving people their time back. When you remove the repetitive, manual work, you create space for what humans do best: strategic thinking, creativity, and problem solving. That's where better buildings come from. That's where better decisions happen. AI is not the end goal. It's the enabler that lets teams focus on higher value work and ultimately deliver better results. Thanks for listening to this episode. If you are interested in learning more, you can visit our sponsor, Great Tech Group, at greattech.com for more information. You can listen to this podcast anytime by simply going to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, be sure to check out our website, bridgingthegappod.com. As always, I'm Todd Weyandt, thanking you for joining the conversation to model the future on the Bridging the Gap podcast. Keep innovating.